Hi there, Rich Cooper again, welcoming you to part two of our conversation with Dean Kamen, who talks about the power of STEM education and the difference that it makes, as well as what's happening with today's global space ecosystem. We hope you enjoy it. You talked about fun and inspiration that come from doing this type of work. One of the persons that's obviously been an inspiration to educators in this arena is Christa McAuliffe, America and the world's first teacher in space. You and the first team have developed a relationship with the McAuliffe family. Can you tell us a little bit about how your paths connected and how the McAuliffe family is working with you and the first team to create that new generation of talent that you've just described?
So more than 30, now almost 40 years ago, I moved my parents up here. My mom's a teacher, as we said. My dad's an artist, a commercial artist. And soon after I moved them up out of New York, up to New Hampshire, where I am, it was announced that NASA was going to had selected the first ever teacher to be put into space. And it turned out to be a woman named Christa McAuliffe, a teacher from New Hampshire. Soon after that announcement, the then governor of New Hampshire, who I had gotten to know, called me and said, "I know your father's an artist, Dean. Is there any chance if we, the state, would send your mom and dad down to watch the launch live? He would, create some sketches down there that he could come back and give art that we could put in the State House and around the state to forever memorialize this exciting event." And of course, that would be an honor. And of course, I told my mom and dad, "You got to go do this." And sadly, my mom and dad were down at the Cape live. They watched the Challenger take off, and they were there live when that thing exploded. And instantly, everybody on board was gone, all 7 astronauts. Well, obviously, it was tremendous trauma to my parents. They came back. And a couple of years later, as FIRST started getting real roots up here, I had an idea. FIRST was founded in New Hampshire. The first teacher in space was somebody that was from New Hampshire. She is now a national hero. She gave her life in that pursuit. So I went back to my dad and said, "Let's make that artwork after all, but make a portrait of her that would be appropriate for the front of a commemorative silver dollar. Let's make a scene of her with students for the backside of a coin with that famous statement that she had made, 'I touch the future, I teach.' And let's see if we can make a commemorative coin with the name FIRST on it as well. And then we'll use that coin for 2 important things: to show the country that we do care about and want to honor our teachers, like my mom, but we also want to use it to promote FIRST. And it would be a national coin, obviously, and it would help us around the country make more awareness for FIRST. And all the proceeds above the cost of making the coin as part of the project, commemorative coin project, would be delivered to FIRST to help support more teams." Well, in 1990, a couple of years after the Challenger disaster, I went down to Washington with the first artwork of both the front and back of that coin, and tried to get a piece of legislation that said, we're going to make a commemorative coin, the proceeds of which support FIRST. And I was pretty much, politely, but pretty much laughed out of the place. They said, "There's no chance you're going to get this for a new little organization." I went back in 2000, 10 years later, when we had a lot more teams. They gave me sort of the same answer. I went back in 2010. That's 20 years later. My father had recently passed just before that, and they pretty much gave me the same answer, and I was running out of patience. 7 or 8 years later, in 2018, I was determined we're going to get our coin. Our time had come. I gave the homework to every first team to write their senator and write their congressman and tell them we need their support, because you need a 2/3 majority in the Senate and a 2/3 majority in the House to ever get a commemorative coin issued. And back in that year, as in the middle of the last administration, there wasn't a lot of cooperation between the two parties. But nonetheless, with the support of the whole First community, where we have teams in every state and pretty much every congressional district, we got all the votes we needed. They produced the coin, and in the next few weeks, I'm going to be sending them out as my gifts to everybody I'm always struggling with a holiday gift for. By the way, the coins will only be minted for the year 2021. So you have about 18 or 19 days left to order a coin. It's a beautiful silver dollar. You can get them in proof or uncirculated. I think the market value of this silver alone in this silver dollar is now about $20. And by the way, not only do we have my father's artwork now done by those fantastic engravers on the front, and that great statement, I touch the future, I teach, on the back, but we actually have on this coin the name of our organization first, and our logo, that circle, that triangle, and that square all interlocked. They are on the coin. It is a first coin. And I think everybody in this country ought to know at least one teacher or one first supporter that deserves to have one of these beautiful coins. And we should get, if you don't order them in the next few days, which you can get them from First or from the Mint, you'll never be able to get them again. So it's also a good investment. But we finally got our coin. It only took me 30 some odd years, but it's like every other project I've ever embarked on. It became an instant overnight success after a few decades.
Well, I'm proud to say, as a collector, I have a few of those, and the coin is magnificent in its artwork. I didn't know that it was your dad who did the artwork, which makes it even more poignant, obviously, to you. But I want to talk about the reverse side of the coin. And as you mentioned, the first logo is on there. You've got the interlocking triangle, and you've got the square and the circle there. What do those shapes mean? What's the background on that? Because again, this is an incredibly unique commemorative piece, but again, it's a silver dollar. It's a magnificent creation that, again, 30 years in the making. When you talked about the inspiration of Orville and Wilbur and all of their efforts to make the first flight, it may not have taken them 30 years, but it seems to me you've learned from their example on persistence, on getting something done there. But can you tell us what the first logo with those interlocking shapes mean?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked. I think a lot of people think it's a veiled allusion to other global sports like the Olympics, where they have 5 interlocking circles. Mm-hmm. And I did say to my dad, who laid it out for me, I want these 3 shapes to be interlocked in a way that is suggestive of that. But I don't want the degenerate shape of just one circle repeated 5 times. Those are very, very specifically unique shapes. And I'll tell you why I chose them. About 2,200 years ago, a guy named Archimedes, famous for doing many, many other things, including Archimedes' principle, was obsessed with the intersection of geometry, numbers, algebra. He's the guy, remember, that figured out Archimedes' principle. Something will displace its own volume if you just put it in water, but the weight of the water is the weight of the volume of that person in water. So you could take any weird shape you want and know what its volume is. If you know the density of water, just see what the volume of that water is. That's what the volume of what you are. Anyway, he was obsessed with mathematics, and without any calculus, which is the way modern day people would solve this problem, he set out not just to solve the problem like the area of a square, that's easy, length times width, but even by his time, people knew the area of a circle, pi r squared, where pi is this funny number, the ratio of circumference to the diameter, but he didn't want to do just flat geometry. He wanted to know the volume of a sphere, 4/3 pi r cubed. People remember that. He wanted to know the volume, not just of the circle, pi r squared, but a cylinder, a can, a circle with a height. He wanted to know the volume of a cone. And by symmetry arguments, Archimedes was able to deduce and prove to himself that if you took a right circular cylinder, its base is a circle and its height is equal to its diameter. So it's a sort of a very short Campbell's soup can. Its height is only equal to the diameter. If you took that can and you put in it a right circular cone, a cone that has the base equal to the same size as that can, but instead of the walls coming straight up, they come right to a point and just touch the middle of the top with all that extra room around it. And you took a sphere whose diameter would just touch the middle of that can, just slip into it, and a point on the top and a point on the bottom, namely a sphere that would just sit inside that right circular cylinder. He said that the volume of the cone plus the volume of the sphere would exactly equal the volume of the cylinder. And after he proved it to himself mathematically, of course, he took a can, basically a volume, and he put those other things in it and proved he was right. He was so impressed with that he asked that when he died, that his epitaph be the symbol of a balance, a point holding two arms, one with the big right circular cylinder hanging from it, and the other one would be a sphere and the cone. So I said to my dad, we don't make three-dimensional logos. You don't make three-dimensional paper, right? But if you look exactly at the cross-section from the side of a right circular cylinder whose height is equal to its diameter, you look at the shadow of it, it's a square. And if you look at a right circular cylinder, it's a triangle. A right circular cone, it's a triangle. And if you look at a perfect sphere, its cross-section is a circle. So I said, give me that triangle and give me that circle and connect them with that square. And as homage to our friend Archimedes, we'll use his great insight as part of the symbol of 20th and 21st century achievements in science, engineering, mathematics, the beautiful symmetry of this all. So the actual logo of FIRST, I give credit to two people, Archimedes and my dad.
That's a lot to draw inspiration from. I want to come back a little bit and talk about the artwork that your dad did of Christa McAuliffe. Obviously, an incredibly inspirational figure. What was the reaction from the McAuliffe family on this type of effort? And how did they feel about this incredible tribute that you and the U.S. Mint have put together?
So even before I started it, I called Steve McAuliffe, the widower of the teacher, Christa, and I said, I don't want you to or your family to ever think I'm trying to in any way take advantage of a tragedy here, but the connection between Christa as a New Hampshire person and FIRST as a New Hampshire organization, and my mom, the teacher as well, and my dad, the artist. And I think we should combine all of this and make a coin that celebrates her as a symbol of all teachers and explorers and help us promote FIRST. And he couldn't have been more gracious. And he said, Dean, the whole family, her extended family, would be very honored if you're able to do this. I know how hard it is to ever make that coin, but if you're willing to work at it, you'll get our full support. By the way, Judge McAuliffe, Steve McAuliffe, is a federal judge. He's a very prestigious, very well-respected, very renowned, and wonderful person to this day. And as we started getting the success and when we were informed that the legislation passed, he was one of the first calls I made, and I said, you have to help me make sure you like the artwork, you like what they're doing, you have to be comfortable with this. And he was such a fantastic supporter to help us give guidance to the folks at the Mint that prepared the final artwork to make the final coin of reality. He was fantastic. So we appreciate that.
That's pretty amazing. Space is an inspiration for generations of people. And there's so much that is happening with space today, with the new countries, the new companies, the new organizations that are all taking place and taking their place with space. What are your thoughts on this entirely new effort and new era of space exploration? And would you want to be one of those persons that goes up?
Well, you asked a lot of different questions and you made a lot of different observations. I think space in and of itself is an incredibly valuable resource to be fully explored and understood and exploited for the benefits it can bring to humanity. But it's also, at this point, still so new and so exciting that I think it's, besides in and of itself being valuable, it is a great symbol or a great reason to show kids how much more new and different opportunities really exist as their life goes on. I think space travel is almost the poster child for science and science fiction. The intersection of science and science fiction is sort of embroiled in space. You know, the 2001 Space Odyssey, all the different TV shows and fantastic movies and series of movies that have space as a backdrop demonstrate just the almost boundless human excitement about space. So I think that in reality, it's a valuable resource that needs to be understood and used properly. But symbolically, it's a way to motivate and inspire kids to learn anything new and different and exciting compared to what's already in last year's textbooks.
So, would you want to go up?
Believe it or not, relative to the other things I'm doing with my time, being on a spaceship right now is not one of those things that I have a particular enthusiasm to do. Would I go? Yeah. But I mean, I also think it's fascinating to see all sorts of the enormous diversity of animals on this planet. But watching a really good documentary that's been turned into, you know, a couple of hours after some fantastic photographers and people that really understand the world of animals, people that have spent virtually their careers, can put together that great documentary that will give you a much better close-up view of a wildebeest or an elephant or a mosquito or anything else. And if you ask me, would I want to go and spend weeks on a safari hoping at some distance to get some glimpse of some of that versus having, you know, Gusteau or some expert deliver a fantastic program about it? I'd watch the program. I maybe that doesn't sound glamorous, but I like to do myself those things that I can feel like I made it happen. If you said to me, would you like to pilot a ship, unlike your helicopter or unlike your airplane, that you could fly into space by some means, yes, that I would like to do. But be a passenger, I'm more than happy to get my understanding of what it was like watching it passively.
Well, the nice thing is now with all the tablets we have, you can take those programs along with you. So after you're done piloting, you can catch up on the National Geographic and the Jacques Cousteau specials that both you and I have enjoyed in the course of our life. I want to come back again and remind listeners about the Christa McAuliffe coin that, as Dean Kamen shared here, it will only be available till the end of calendar year 2021 here. And if you go to usmint.gov, you can literally search for the Christa McAuliffe Silver Dollar, and you'll be able to find that silver dollar there in the various shapes and sizes that Dean has elaborated there. But We're very grateful for the time that you've given us here, Dean. In wrapping this up, I'd love to ask you two quick questions. As you talked about piloting that spacecraft, or potentially piloting that spacecraft to space, who would you want your co-pilot to be? And my last question for you is, what advice would you give to a prospective inventor or creator like yourself who may have had some challenges in school early on, but still has big dreams? What would be your advice to that young person?
I'll take the second question first. My advice to every young person that wants to pursue both anything in the field of inventing and creating, innovating, and pursue any career that also requires that they develop a really deep understanding of science and technology and mathematics. And I tell them all the same thing. Those are both incredibly rewarding, but they require an intense level of focus and effort. They're hard. All the easy stuff has already been done. You can't invent the easy stuff. Somebody beat you to it. And the mathematics and the science is subtle, and there's a lot of it. And learning all of it takes quite a bit of time before you can piece it all together. And I tell all the kids the same thing. Don't give up. Tenacity is the most important thing. Perseverance is critical. When I see successful inventors or successful people, period, in life, it's rarely the one that had the best education with the most degrees. It's rarely the one that you would say was just born the smartest or born on the right side of the tracks. The most common element of every successful person I've ever met is one and only one thing. They don't give up. They focus. They're willing to fail, pick themselves up, and try again and again and again until they succeed. And that characteristic is critical, particularly if you want to go innovate. So I would strongly suggest to kids, stay with it, deal with the failures, learn from them, and push on. On your other one, who would I want as my co-pilot? Probably the person that had the most in-depth understanding of all the onboard systems, because as you head out, hurling yourself at high speed into the infinite space, something will inevitably go wrong. And I'd want the best shot of dealing with whatever is going wrong. And to do it, I'd want the best, smartest, most competent person that's most familiar with what the systems look like. And we would deal with whatever challenge we had to face.
Sounds like you take any of the members of the Apollo 13 crew with you.
Everyone.
Who learned how to do just that. Dean Kamen, thank you for your time and sharing that with us, and sharing with us the story behind the Christa McAuliffe Silver Dollar, but more importantly, the work that what FIRST is doing to create that new generation of scientists, technologists, engineers, mathematicians, as well as all the places that they can touch, be that business, the arts, exploration. It does open up so many avenues. We're grateful for your time. We're grateful for the work that FIRST does. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, and good luck.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this special episode of our Space4U podcast. We're grateful again to Dean Kamen for his time and his energy in sharing his thoughts about FIRST, as well as the background on the Christa McAuliffe coin. Again, you can go to usmint.gov and get your hands on that. But again, if you want more of Space4U, please feel free to visit us at spacefoundation.org, and be sure to follow us on our various social media accounts at Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and more. We're grateful for everything that you do, because at Space Foundation, while we advocate for innovation to benefit life on Earth, remember, at Space Foundation, we will always have space for you. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.